Hello.
Hi.
Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Let me start with this. This is my first question for you. Why did you say yes when I asked you, like, hey, I'm thinking about maybe starting a podcast? I know just saying that feels so basic.
Yeah.
But where I was like, hey, I'm thinking about kind of starting some conversations, filming them, probably going to do a podcast style because that's what everyone's doing.
Yeah.
What made you say, like, yeah, I want to be a part of that? Why are you here?
Yeah. Good question.
Thank you.
Probably because I am obsessed with podcasts in general. Like when I talk to people, usually it seems that every conversation I'm having somewhere along the lines comes up me going,
I just listened to that.
I just heard in this podcast that yada, yada, yada. So probably that reason. Also, I mean, I love to support. You've been a friend for years and we've done a lot of cool things for me and other people. So
I was thinking about that, actually. You are one of the first people that I worked with when I got to Austin.
Yeah.
It was 6 years ago, I think.
Yeah, back in
2018. So 5 years ago, I think. But yeah, you were one of the first people that I shot with.
Yeah. Where
I was still like putting together a portfolio and being like, hey, I'm kind of into this photography thing. Don't know what that's going to look like. Yeah. And then we've just kind of stayed friends.
I know, it's
through
wild.
The seasons.
You were referred from a friend, and yet like
that person I don't even hear. Like that person has disappeared.
Same for me.
So that I was actually encouraged when you told me that because I was like, did I do something wrong?
You're also that friend that, and I am so inconsistent at times, but like you never veer on like your consistency and like the people that are in your life, you maintaining that level of friendship and just like that is a superpower for you. I feel like it's just staying connected where I like my mind, I feel like I'm drinking way too much coffee every day and like my mind's going a million miles a minute. Yeah.
Well, thank you. I'm so glad that you said that. That means so much more than you know. That's a huge value for me. Mm-hmm. It's also my biggest pet peeve of other people.
We've had that conversation.
Is that I don't even know what the word is, but people are just, flaky, I guess. Yeah. And not in like not just in showing up for specific plans, but just like, hey, I'm going to do my life and you may be involved and you may not be involved, but I'm not really committed to making sure you're involved.
Yeah.
And I don't see life that way.
Right.
But I also know that I'm unique in that.
Yeah.
Most people, especially younger people, are kind of, I just go with the flow. I'm chill. And so I get accused all the time of being like, oh my gosh, like calm down, like take it easy. It's fine. Like I'm just busy. And it's like, I'm actually busier than you are probably. Yeah.
You have like 2 more jobs.
I have other things, right? I just want to make time for it. But yeah, I really appreciate you saying that because one, I'm glad that I'm able to be that way, but also I'm glad that has not gone unnoticed.
No, for sure.
So I appreciate that. So let me let you in and just kind of explain a little bit about why I'm doing this.
Sure.
I find myself having conversations all the time with people where I'm just kind of thinking, I wish more people were here. Mm. Like, this is really fascinating. This is really deep or substantial in some way.
Right.
And I think, man, I wish we were capturing this. I wish this was available to like refer to later. And it's always around kind of like topics that matter to people. Mm-hmm. Topics that are not popular to talk about because they're too serious or like, oh, I don't want to like get in my feels today. Yeah. And yet I'm continue to have them with everybody because we're deep feelers, regardless of whether or not we think we are.
Right. The deepest longing of the human heart is human connection.
Right. Exactly. And so I'm having these one-on-one conversations and they're really meaningful and people are sharing really insightful things. And I'm like, ooh, I wonder if we're the only 2 people who think that. Mm-hmm. Probably not.
Right.
And so between that and just my kind of desire to make cool stuff and like film stuff and produce stuff and make content. I was like, what's a good way of having conversations with people, being engaged and involved in their lives, and also potentially providing other creators or other content creators or people who are involved in social media, making it a resource to where we're having the conversation, but we're also creating something that could be useful for them on their platform.
Yeah.
I don't have a real big goal of like, oh, hope I get 1 million podcast subscribers in the next 5 years.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to build this network where I'm like, oh yeah, like I'm huge and everyone wants to listen to me. I actually really have no value for that. What I want to do is provide a resource for the people who come on, for when they walk away, they're walking away, if anything, having a great conversation, hopefully. But also, hey, here's an hour worth of content that you could use for your own channels because you have things that you want to say.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm doing this. And so I wanna have conversations with people who I know are kind of in the social media world in some way or not. But that's kind of what this is all about. And so I know we've worked together creatively in some capacity, but you told me that you were kind of wanting to get into photography.
Right.
Tell me why.
Yeah. So, looking back on, actually, I think I was on Facebook and, old memories are popping up and they're photos of Halloween parties, Christmas parties, me in Barcelona. And I would bring my camera around just to capture people's expressions and just like them authentically in the mode of whatever setting they're in. And I really love that. And being able to show people, because someone can say, oh, like you look really great here.
Right.
But if they don't feel that, like everyone has their own opinion on how they look. But I'm that friend that I will whip out my phone because I have to, in this exact moment, take a photo of you because everything is right about it.
Right. You need them to know what you're seeing.
Yes.
And so if they're not seeing it, you're like, well, let me figure out how I can capture it.
Yeah.
I totally get that.
Yeah. They'll like look down and I'm like, oh,
yeah,
look back. So I think recognizing that in my past and in the midst of me having just graduated college, trying to figure out where I'm heading towards and navigating post-grad, what do I do with my life? I thought, why not give it a shot? Because I'm as young as I'll ever be and I have my whole life to play it safe if I want to. So let's be a little risky in our 20s and see if it pans out in our 30s. So currently it's a hobby. I do love it. It is a passion, but I think where I was in the beginning is feeling fearful of thinking that I won't have a place in that world, having the fear that every photographer is a competitor and not someone that I can learn from, right. And any possible mentorship, stuff like that. So yeah, there was a lot of hesitancy at first, but when I started to openly say how I was feeling, it was almost as if like the opportunities just led themselves to me.
Yeah.
And people were interested, especially, me being so new and wanting just to get out there and practice like you have in the past and just get some shots taken.
Yeah.
I've had some opportunities to do so. And so that has been amazing to learn a lot and see where I started and where I am now.
Yeah, it's a journey. I felt the same way when I started. I was like, everyone's a photographer.
Yeah.
And also just as a man starting in that field, it's just like, do you just cold call a bunch of women because that's the only people that I knew that wanted photos of themselves.
Yeah.
I was like, do you just ask a bunch of random people to take their photo? And how do you do that and not be creepy about it? And how do you do that, safely, but also intentionally with like an artistic reason? But yeah, I think the really interesting about art is as soon as you stop thinking about how to do it and start doing what you want to do and just you're using that medium.
Yeah.
But you're really just making your art and you've chosen the tool of photography to do it, then you stop worrying about the outcome. Then you stop worrying about the financial success, and you're just choosing to play with the toys that you've wanted to use. And for you, it's photography. For me, it's photography. It's the camera. And that's really freeing.
Yes.
Because then you're like, oh, great. I can just do what I want to do. And if it comes, great. If the success comes, if the money comes, awesome.
Yes.
But if it doesn't, that's not why I started. That's not the goal.
Yeah.
And so I kind of have the freedom to ride the roller coaster of the experience and not be emotionally overwhelmed when there's not a lot of clientele, and when there is, to not get carried away in the money and lose track of the reason.
Yeah, because the camera is just a vehicle for my passion to be out there.
Right.
The money and the following that could and would come possibly isn't my main goal.
Right.
Yeah.
So talk to me about social media then. What's your current relationship with it as an individual? And then as an artist, kind of what's your approach to it? Are you going to try to build out a social channel of some sort? What do you do now, and will you use it for kind of that the artistic endeavor?
Great question. I currently do have my own social media, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. I use them for just kind of scrolling purposes, catching up with friends, pretty much what anyone else would use. But back in January, I hosted a girls sit down, write out goals of what we want for this year. And my goal for this specifically was, by the end of the year, have a Instagram account created for my photography and have 10 projects that I've done and be able to put that on display on my Instagram. So currently I'm at almost four opportunities to shoot, and we're on track so far.
Heck yeah. So by the end of this year.
By the end of this year.
So starting 2024.
Yes.
You'll have launched and have a portfolio.
Yes. So all free work, 2023.
Yeah, for sure.
Just
doing the grind.
Doing the grind now. Kind of boots on the ground, if you will. Yeah. And, I have a positive relationship with social media, I'd say. Oh, you do? Oh, that's good. I'd say I have
a good... common these days.
Yeah. I mean, I'd say I have a good relationship with it. Occasionally, like any other person, I'll fall down the rabbit hole of Instagram. But, the only time I'm on TikTok, primarily, I will save it for the gym when I'm on the Stairmaster. Because it's like the worst of the worst, and in my opinion, the best of the best. Social media, TikTok is, it kind of takes my mind off of the torture of cardio.
So you use it strategically to avoid as an escape.
Yes.
But it's not your world that you live in.
No.
So I guess as a human, as an individual, are you primarily a consumer when it comes to social, or do you make it a point to include other people in your life by posting and talking about what you're doing and kind of also creating? Definitely,
I include stories. I'm not as interactive on the grid, but definitely, typically stories and
Smoke, get out of here.
Hey, baby. And yeah, I'd say so.
That's interesting. That's something that I have kind of struggled with, which was I have my platform, I have my channel, and I'm just kind of using it to consume. And I didn't really think like, oh, it would be important for me, or it might be important for me to create and to produce. I really only thought of, sorry, my dog is wondering why we're not talking to her. I was never really someone who thought people care about what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Because my idea was, if you try really hard on Instagram, you're one of those people who's all about likes and all about attention. And especially as a guy, it's like, am I going to post selfies? Absolutely not. Like immediately canceled from any sort of relevance, especially within the dating world, I guess. But it was like, what am I going to do? Like, I'm not doing a lot of cool things. I don't really have people like, oh, let's take a picture together. That's not exactly like what we do.
Yeah.
And so I just realized I'm just sitting here sharing direct messages with people that I think are funny. And then I'm consuming a bunch of people's content that I have no personal relationship with. And I'm miserable. That I had a really come to Jesus moment, you know, where I was like, I think I'm addicted to something that I don't even like.
Oh my gosh.
Because it's entertaining, but it's really just a pastime. I'm not getting any genuine feedback about my life.
Yeah.
I'm not interacting with real people in real time, and yet I can't escape my phone. And that was really like frustrating for me and kind of eye-opening at the same time. And so then I made a purpose of like, I'm not going to be on the channels unless I'm contributing. I need to be a creator and not a consumer so that I have a, you know, reciprocal relationship with this versus just consuming, just comparing myself to everyone else, comparing my behind the scenes life to their highlight reel, coming up wildly unsatisfied, thinking that that's real.
You speaking some truth right now.
Being super unhappy all the time.
Yeah.
And thinking everyone else is happy.
Right.
And then sitting here like this in one-on-one conversations and someone else being like, oh my gosh, me too.
Yeah.
And then I was like, oh, okay, so this is not a unique experience. And then I started realizing that people on Instagram and social media were always talking about how social media is the worst, right? Like there's the meta conversation that's happening online where we're all not trying to be addicted to Instagram and TikTok, and yet we're all consuming that like content on Instagram and TikTok.
Well, and it becomes it's almost like an inside joke to the entire world that we overconsume, but yet we're dodging to the next aisle in the supermarket if we see someone that we only follow on Instagram, but would never go up to and talk to, you know? Like there was someone, I don't know where I heard it, but was said that if you wouldn't go up to them in the supermarket and say hi, then you don't need to be following them on Instagram or Twitter.
Oh, interesting.
Because
that's a good litmus test.
I'm like, that's so true, because I have found myself feeling anxiety looking at someone's post, feeling so inadequate when like they're just doing them and I'm just doing me. And we are so separate, and she's not better than me and I'm not better than her. We're just different people, and that's okay. Like, yeah, it was mind-blowing coming to that realization.
Yeah, I really resonated that with seeing who looks at my story on Instagram. I'm like, some of the people who look at my story, I think you've never spoken to me, or we haven't spoken in years, like years. And yet you're a constant presence viewing my story. And it's really, you know, I'm a hypocrite because I also look at people's stories who I don't talk to.
Yeah.
But in my opinion, it's because they have no interest in a relationship with me. Now, a lot of it's because it's high school friends or college friends, and I just assume they don't want to be friends with me. And so I project that, and then I'm like, oh, everyone hates me. Even though that's me, like that's my fault. But I just think it's really interesting the number of people who won't reply to a text message, but who look at your story. You know what I mean? And, and as petty as that feels, and even it sounds saying out loud, there is, I think, a lot of truth.
So much truth.
To you won't take the time to engage in a relationship with me or prioritize it. And I'm speaking to myself, like I also am doing this. So I'm not just saying like everyone else sucks and I'm great. But like you won't take the time to respond to a text message, keep a conversation going, but you will sit and look at all of my stories and probably a bunch of other people, which means you're prioritizing Instagram or social media over real relationships. Now that's a really generic judgment, which I know is nuanced. And so I want to always, anytime I'm having any of these conversations, I want to always say, I know there's more to it than I'm aware of. I know people's lives are more complicated than I know about. And so I shouldn't be just assuming, oh, you won't text me back, but you'll post on your story. I'm not important to you. That's an oversimplification. That's not what it is all the time.
Yeah.
But that is what it is sometimes.
Yeah. And that's a really great point. And it makes you think, like, people would have to have a little bit of self-awareness that that's going on, because a similar situation has happened with me where I've had a friend posting like 3 memes back to back, and I've asked, 2 text messages that one is a bit like time sensitive, and it like poses a question of, I start to feel like inadequate.
Yeah.
As
it builds insecurity.
Totally. And it's not like, I don't want to say it's all them, and it's definitely not all me, but the maths when you when you get down to it.
Yeah, there's literally people right now who have not replied to questions that I have. Not like, hey, how are you? And I just like want to be friends or whatever.
Yeah.
But like people who I actually need responses from. Yeah. Who haven't responded to me, but who have posted, who have been active on social, which you are allowed to do and you should do. Like there are a lot of relationships that are probably not as high on the priority list for me as maintaining my Instagram. Now, I have more of a business approach to my social media than the average person. And so to me, that doesn't feel totally unjustified to say, hey, I got to prioritize being active and keeping up and some of the more business side of things. I'm also a bad friend at times, and I'm clearly am selfish and will post and will be active and neglect my friends. So I do that for sure. The thing that's interesting to me is, how do you have a conversation with someone about that?
I was about to ask.
Genuinely.
Hot take. Have you asked? Have you ever had that conversation?
Oh yeah. All the time.
Yeah.
And I get the same response.
What is it?
Oh my gosh, stop taking things so seriously. I have a life. Which is like, that's true, but is that the truth for this situation? Yeah. Because I have literally maybe 3 or 4 times. Also, for those of you who are listening, it's started raining, so it's now loud. A very few times in my life, if ever, has someone been like, you know what? Totally my bad. Totally forgot. It got pushed down. I wasn't being responsible, and I'm sorry. I'll try not to let it happen again. Now, I've also not said that as often as I should, but I do try to scroll through my text messages, make sure there's no one I haven't responded to. Yeah. And obviously, like everyone, I get insecure about how long it's been since I've replied, and then I feel like, oh no. Yeah. And then you just double down on it being bad, and then I'm here sitting being like, I bet you checked to see if, like, you've checked, realized you haven't replied, and now you feel bad, and now you don't know what you're doing, and I just wish you would just get over it. Yeah. Just text me back anyway. Yeah. So I get it. Like, I've been there. But that's the feedback that's so hard. Because, like, what am I going to do with, like, what am I supposed to do with that? If someone's like, I'm just sorry, like, I'm busy, like, I have stuff going on. I can't be like, liar. You know what I mean? Like, you can't just be like, you're lying to me, because I don't know. Yeah. And yet it happens so frequently. And I see you so unburdened with time because of how much you post on social, that I'm trying to reconcile these things. And I'm someone who wants to have a serious conversation about that. Yeah. People aren't, because it takes a level of responsibility and accountability that you have to have. Yeah. And I'm not trying to say like, oh, I'm the bigger person and I'm the more mature like person who goes to therapy, who's like, I'm ready to have this serious conversation. I just like to be, for me, it comes down to expectations. Like, what's a fair expectation to have with your friends? Yeah. What level of friendship do you need to have with someone before it's fair to say, hey, I just feel like you're not prioritizing some of the things that I need from you, and you're prioritizing other things that to me don't seem objectively as important, and I'm hearing something that maybe I shouldn't be hearing, and you're telling me something maybe you don't want to be telling me. I want you to know that
Yes.
without accusing you of being a bad friend. But there's just people don't really want to hear. Maybe they don't want to hear because it makes them feel bad.
Yeah.
And so the defensive thing is to just be like, I'm busy.
Yeah.
Because then you don't have to, take accountability, like you said.
Well, that defense mechanism is going to immediately pop up.
Right.
You're not going to want,
Right.
that's going to be, you're going to feel triggered. You're going to get defensive. But there is so much power in accountability and just being like, hey, you know what? I messed up.
Right.
I was, I don't want to make excuses. Like my mind has not been, on the place that it should be. And yeah, but it's very tough. You have to be willing to grow. But if there's no growth, then of course it's not going to go hand in hand with accountability.
Well, what would be a good way? How would you want to be approached? So, like, obviously you sound like you're emotionally healthy enough to be confronted.
Yes.
But when you're not in a context like this where like you're kind of like, it's not like when you come to therapy and you're like, I'm ready to deal with my problems.
Yeah. Yeah.
How would a girlfriend best approach, or a boyfriend or any friend best approach you and say, hey, you seem to be active on social and you're not kind of maintaining a friendship with me, or I'm looking to hear from you, or you don't text me back. And as whiny as that sounds, I think we all feel that.
Yeah.
What would be the best way for someone to engage with you in that way where you would take it seriously and maybe not be overly defensive?
Honestly, for myself, the way I think I would approach someone would be start out by letting him know, like, I care about you. I care about you so much. I'm willing to go here and have this vulnerable conversation with you, hoping that you can see that I only want to come from a place of love and where we can leave this conversation both having a better understanding and feeling better off. Because if I don't feel good or you don't feel good, it's not good. Yeah. Whether you want to admit it or not, there are underlying cracks going on. And so in the instance of someone not, like, their presence is so present on social media, but they're not getting back to you in a timely manner, it feels like priorities aren't there. And it feels like, I don't want to say disrespectful, because that would sound an alarm, I think.
It might not be that way, but I think it emotionally feels that way.
Yes, exactly. So maybe something like that, where I'm like, I don't think that this is the message that you're trying to send.
Right, you're not intentionally doing this to me.
But I'm receiving it this way. It's like when I've got a friend, love her to death, but she's always late. And constantly, never fails.
Yeah.
And I haven't had this conversation with her because I just continue to give grace, because
you can just send her this
her
clip
so
to you. You just send her this clip.
She's gonna get it.
And then be like, hey, just so you know.
But it's one of those things where when you are habitually late, in my mind, you're telling me that your time is more important than my time. And for me, it just feels like that feels disrespectful. It feels like it's a lack of respect on everyone who's here. Right. So it makes me think about that. Like, I know that's not what you're trying to do.
Right.
But it's coming across that way. And I just want to know, like, why is this happening? Or like, can you give me some insight on like why I'm waiting 2 days just to hear this response, but you've got, your 1,000 followers that have such access to you when I just need this one thing, and it does, like you mentioned before, real life relationships are and can be affected when your main priority is social media.
Yeah. So for the sake of the Instagram bite, I guess I want to ask this question a little bit more specifically or condensely. If you have a friend who has not gotten back to you in a kind of a timely manner, right? It's been a couple of days, you've asked them something and they haven't replied. But during that time, they've been overwhelmingly active on social media. Do you feel like that it's fair to feel upset by that? And do you think there warrants any sort of conversation? Or is that just the name of the game, the way it is, and to bring that up is to be petty and to be insecure?
Well, I think my first thought goes to in what parameter. If, you know, I have a friend and she is overwhelmingly popular on her photography business. And a lot of that traction is coming from Instagram. And she's constantly putting out stuff for her account. I can understand.
So if there's a business reason.
Yeah. If there's a business reason, I can understand that. Feeling like you're overwhelmed, you've got a lot on your plate. I think I can understand that. If it is separate from influencing, which I guess is its own career,
right?
You know, you are doing it for a reason. If it's just pure, like, posting,
just for fun,
exactly.
You're bored and you're scrolling.
If I see you're consistently active on social media, yes, I and then it goes back to like John Gottman's book where you're not supposed to take things personally. Like, no one made you feel this way. Well, they didn't make me feel hurt, but I am hurt,
right?
Because I feel like there's that lack of attention. There's so much attention being given to all of these other people, and I just need this one thing from you. Or like, I would just like to feel a part of your life, like all 1,000 followers feel and are a part of your life. So
for you, then it feels fair to have a conversation about that.
And also, I think it goes to how close you are with the person that you may be addressing.
Oh, that's interesting.
In my opinion, I don't know that I would approach a conversation like that with someone who I'm not on a certain level with, So what about you?
Well, I think I have a similar feeling. I think it depends on the relationship.
Yeah.
But then I also think that there's a fair expectation to have of human adults when it comes to being responsible.
True.
And so I don't think that I should have to be your good friend for you to be a responsible human to me.
I like where you're actually getting at.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Like if they're not willing to give you that attention, is it even someone you want to work with? Because what if that is like a bit of foreshadowing into the amount of effort they could potentially put in later on the road?
Right. It's like if I'm connecting with someone who's reached out to me or communicated interest in collaborating or even working with me.
Yeah.
We may have just met, but when I ask you, hey, can you send me some availability?
Yeah.
And you don't respond for 3 or 4 days.
Yeah.
I don't think we should have to be best friends for you to be responsible to be timely.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like there are levels of, if I have a close friend and we're just chatting and then they stop responding for 3 or 4 days, I think, and they're still active, I think, there might be some space for me to engage, be like, hey, what's up? Kind of feel like there's some distance. I don't think you should do that with someone you just met.
Yeah.
So if you're just building a friendship, probably don't, because then you might be a little bit, clingy or whatever.
Yeah.
But for relationships where there's some level of professional expectation, I don't think our personal relationship should dictate how responsible you need to be.
Because of compartmentalization of personal and professional.
And now it requires a little bit of, I would say, what's the word? Like big picture thinking to say, hey, this person has a job, has a living, has a full schedule, and they're asking me, and I'm asking them to be a part of that for a time. So I should be diligent about letting them know when and how.
Yeah.
But when I say I want to work with you, and then I don't do my due diligence to let you know when and how soon I can, then what I hear, and once again, I don't think people are actually saying this, but what I hear, what I feel is, I want your talent, I want your time, but I don't think that I need to meet you halfway with mine. And that feels hard. So when I'm sitting here with literally tens, if not hundreds, but 10, 15 unanswered DMs from potential clients who have all said, I really want to work with you, but none of them have made the time to get back to me. Makes it hard for me to want to prioritize. And it's hard because I get you might be busy.
Yeah.
But if you want to instigate that level of expectation. So to go back to answer your question, I think it really depends on relationship of when the conversation should happen.
Yes.
But I don't think the relationship matters as much when it comes to how you feel.
Right.
Like there are people who I've met and who I've really wanted to connect with quickly, and then they are not responsive or their schedule is not really, compatible with mine.
Yeah.
And I'm just bummed that we don't talk as much. But that's on me. Like that's just me managing my emotional expectations. It's not fair for me to put any sort of judgment on them as like they're not being a good person.
Yeah.
But I think the feelings are real. And that's a hard way to balance, which is I might be feeling something that's no one's fault.
Yeah.
I might be feeling something negative, but there's no one to blame.
Right.
And that's true often.
All across the board.
I think that a lot of times the situation is just hard because you have an outlook on the world. You have an expectation of how people should operate, and someone else is just different from you. And you're feeling natural, that the difference is just creating a natural tension. That's a challenge, but it's not an indictment on their character, and it's not an indictment on you having unfair expectations. It's just what it is.
Absolutely.
And so then for me, it's when do you talk about your feelings?
Yeah.
Is it fair to say, hey, I'm not blaming you for this, but I'm kind of bummed?
Yeah.
Because people don't like to be the bad guy.
Right.
So what do you do about that?
That's tough, man.
These are the questions I think about. Like this is why I wanted to have this, platform situation, because I'm thinking, man, I'm just overwhelmed with these thoughts, and I'm processing way more than anybody else is probably about these things, and I'm reading into things in a way that no one else cares. But I think people care and they feel it. They just don't think about it, or they don't articulate it, or they don't kind of dig deep to be like, why am I bummed?
Right. Oh, that's something that I've thought about before.
Right.
And I just never thought like to mention it or tackle that or push further on why I'm feeling this way.
Right. And there's a lot of power in giving words to how you feel.
Yeah.
And that's kind of been my place in a lot of people's lives. I've just found, which is I'm going to be your friend probably, but I may not have you as a friend where I'll be here to talk out loud and help you process things and maybe answer some questions or maybe give some insight into your thoughts and feelings. And maybe that's empowering for you. But that's kind of where I'm not the person they call to go out on Friday night, because I'm probably not going to want to do the things that they're wanting to do, or vice versa.
You and me both.
Right. And that's okay. I'm not like, oh, I'm a victim and nobody wants to be my friend and I'm just such a good friend to everybody. No, I'm a polarizing person, and a lot of people are like, no, Dave, you're way too deep and serious all the time. And
But I love these conversations because it's so true that they're not only needed, but requested, and it's so necessary to talk about certain topics, like, for instance, what we're talking about now, they're valid feelings, and it's kind of like the big question of where do you go with what you're feeling.
My suspicion is, and this is just totally me guessing, but my suspicion is that one of the reasons why podcasts have become such a idol of people's attention is that it's a way of them feeling a part of serious conversations that they don't have to partake in, but they can have someone else say the words out loud that they're thinking.
They can gain the insight without actually being in the room.
Right, because if someone else talks to you directly about how the fact that you haven't texted me back, but you keep posting on your story. Yeah. If someone does that to you, you're defensive and hurt. But when someone else does it to someone else, and you're watching it online, you're like, yeah, that's how I feel. Yeah. And then you think of the 3 people who are offenders to you. Yeah. And So it's like the message and the truth is there, but I need to be separated from it in order to be comfortable talking about it.
Yeah.
And I've just never been that person. I don't like to talk about it conceptually. I want to be like, what about you? What about me? How can we make this personal? Because I want to know if I am living life in a way that is hurting someone else's feelings.
I think you zoom in to it as close as you can.
Which most people hate. Like, I have just, that has not been, let's say, a productive friendship tactic. Because
do you think it's because I have my best friend, she sometimes will say, oh, that's just the insecure friend that I am. Like, it's an insecure friend thing. Anxiety friend, I think is what she says.
Yeah, I've been called a high maintenance friend, which is really interesting. That's
shocking.
Which is interesting to me too. And I asked why, as a high maintenance friend would. Prove it.
Yeah.
No, but I was like following up with someone about plans, and you said you were interested in doing these things.
Yeah.
What's up? Because where are you?
Yeah.
And, they kind of just offhand said, like, yeah, I'm just not used to having people who are as high maintenance of friends as you. And when I think about high maintenance friends, I think about someone who's like, I need you 4 to 5 hours a week.
Yeah.
I need you a certain amount of time. I need you, in these certain places, in these certain ways. And it's like the structure and the specifics are all really important. And I don't feel that way about myself. And I've never been told that in terms of that context. So I asked, like, well, what do you mean by high maintenance?
Like, what's your definition of high maintenance?
Right. And they were like, well, you just, kind of expect everybody to kind of do certain things. And I was like, when you say expect people to do certain things, do you mean expect them to mean what they say and behave in a way that is aligned with what they say?
Yeah.
Because if that's your level of high maintenance, sure, I'm the most high maintenance, because that's how I want to be. And that's what I want from other people is when you say, hey, I'd really love to work out with you, then let me know when you're free to work out. Make some time to work out. If I told you this is when I go work out and you say, I would love to join you, I would expect that you might make some time.
Right. Expectations.
Right. And then you get into, like, obviously deeper conversations about, well, what does friendship really mean? And like, what does making time for someone really mean? Because for some people it might be, I have 1 hour a week for a phone call. And that might really be what they can do, which is fine. And as long as that's consistent and that's true,
you'll bank on the
100%.
hour phone call.
Once I understand what your version of friendship is, and then you provide that, I will feel like you are being genuine and aligned. You're being consistent. And that's what I would expect from you.
Yeah.
When you say things that to me would imply certain behaviors that I don't think are unfair, that I don't think are overly, dramatic or too high maintenance.
Yeah.
And then you don't act on those things. And then when you are called out for the disparity between what you said and how you've behaved, and your response is, I'm high maintenance, I don't know what to do with that. Like, I just disagree. Yeah. I have a difference of opinion when it comes to the evaluation of this circumstance.
Yeah.
And the problem is when you don't think you're in the wrong and someone else thinks you're in the wrong, but they can't articulate or aren't willing to engage in a conversation about why, then I don't know what to do.
That's them doubling down almost, And I'm really glad that you asked the follow-up question of, like, because I think this should be done so much more often than it is, where, right, like you say, or you're approached with, I think that you aren't being thoughtful. And it's like, well, what do you need? What are you needing from me that would make you feel like I'm more thoughtful?
Right.
And then come to find out their version of thoughtful is just to, like, ask if I want to go to dinner with the other girls.
Right.
It's like something that's so simple, and it really was based off of like a one scenario event that happened that made you feel this way. Whereas someone telling you that you're high maintenance is a completely different, me hearing high maintenance. I mean, and I think a lot of people, that's very negative.
Oh, I've never heard of someone who was like, I love how high maintenance I am as a friend.
I wish I were more high maintenance.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, I wish I was more high maintenance about my hygiene in my house. Like, I wish I cared more about it being more clean, because then I would be more clean. But like, that's very different than like, oh, I wish I was more high maintenance, which means my expectation of the world was even higher than it should be. And therefore I'm more unhappy most of the time. Like, no one's saying that.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think that was great that you were like, what do you mean by high maintenance? How am I showing up as a high maintenance friend to you?
Right.
Then to come to find out, it's just the fact that you have realistic expectations and you have timelines and deadlines that you would like to see be on time, and that's interesting.
It's, once again, these are things that I spend my time thinking about.
Yeah.
Like, these are the things that I process out loud about, okay, someone said something to me and I don't agree with it, but I want to trust that they had some level of truth to what they were saying. They actually meant what they said.
Yeah.
Because if I just believe that you're just like throwing out lies to be hurtful, then this isn't going to be productive.
Yeah. So
let me really contend with, what did you say about me? What can I look at? And then I choose to go and ask people, hey, so after that person said that to me, I went to 3 of my close friends and I said, would you ever describe me as a high maintenance friend? Across the board. No, LOL, no.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, so that's helpful, but let's have this conversation. Well, here's what they meant by it. And then they were like, oh, well, yeah, we think you're that. Like, we think that you hold people to a relatively high standard. But in my opinion, I was like, but I don't think it's unwarranted. Like, I don't think that I push my expectations on people that they didn't accept. Mm-hmm. To me, I want people to set their own expectation.
Yeah.
And then I will just hold you to that.
Yeah.
But I didn't feel like, that was the conversation that was happening with my friend. And so that's where I'm like, okay, so I want to process these things out loud. I want to figure it out because I really don't want to be someone who makes someone feel bad. I don't want to be a judgmental friend, but I also want to be intentional. I want to talk on purpose. I want to live on purpose. And I want to be getting better.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not, we live in a culture that's like, you're good enough. It's like, I understand that fundamental truth that yes, you need to find contentment with who you are and learn to love that. But we're never just perfect.
Right.
If you're good enough now, what does that say about who you should become? Mm-hmm. Are you just done?
Yeah.
No, obviously not. Yeah. So we all kind of know that. And so I don't want to lean into the temptation of that's just me. Mm-hmm. And so learn to love me or get out.
Yeah.
Now, if there's core values that are the problem, then I'm not going to compromise on those things. Then I will be like, that's just who I am.
Yeah.
But I would rather adjust how I can relate and behave with someone to make it better for them if I can, if it doesn't make me compromise who I want to be. So I want to take these, this feedback seriously. And so when someone says that, I want to really think about it and critically, kind of approach it in a, hey, okay, maybe I was over dramatic and maybe I was a little bit, hurt. And so I came across, and that's valid and that's fair. But I don't want to just believe it as absolute truth and then be like, I guess I'll just like stop.
Yeah.
And so, the whole like go with the flow culture. Yeah. That's not me.
Yeah.
And I don't actually think people are like that. I think people are mostly like that.
Yeah.
When it allows them to avoid having to make decisions that hold them accountable.
Right.
And that's a really cynical perspective. I get that. And maybe I'm just a cynical person. And I know I'm unique in a lot of ways socially when it comes to relational expectations.
But I think we're both very similar in the way that we just want to constantly evolve positively, the upwards trajectory.
Yeah.
I think we're constantly trying to self-improve, find out what has not worked for us, what has worked for us. In my mind, I feel like it makes me think about the time that I had a friend who told me that I was confrontational. And
speaking my language.
It very much like you prompted me to follow up with like, what do you mean? How am I confrontational?
Tell me I'm confrontational.
Tell me I'm confrontational. One more time.
Exactly.
Yeah. And it come to find out, I believe she said something like, you just have to continue asking questions.
Yeah.
Like, Lord, that's just the worst, right? Questions. But I needed to know, like, in whatever argument or situation we were like going through.
Yeah.
Like how we're going to get on the other side of this. So I am going to ask follow-up questions. I also want to know what I did wrong in your eyes so I can self-evaluate. And in my mind, that's not being confrontational. I'm just trying to like get to the root of the problem so that we can better understand one another.
Right.
That's what friendship is. That's what connection is at the end of the day.
Yeah. To me, that's kind of telling.
Yeah.
In that when someone pushes back on you trying to understand what they mean, there's a good chance that they don't actually mean what they're saying.
Or even know where they're going. And
they're looking to get out of the conversation. They're not looking to find a resolution. And so
my entire past relationship.
Right. And so when someone says, like, if they get offended that you would want them to clarify.
Yeah.
Why would you ever be offended by that? Like, someone is seeking to have a better understanding of the words you're saying. Literally, they're trying to be a good listener.
I'm actually appreciative of when my friends
right.
want me to clarify something or like say something, like explain something in a way that makes a little bit more sense to them. I love when that happens. It shows that they care enough about me to break down something in a different way. And I will never be upset about that. And I'll never apologize for trying to be clear with someone.
Right.
You know?
Well, and I will say, and I want to, like I always will try to do, there are definitely ways to question people in a way that is confrontational and disrespectful. Like I think if you give someone a reason and they're like, well, that's not good enough.
Yeah.
That's different. Yeah. They need to be able to contend with what you said, understand it, and then unpack it with you if they want to know more. And so, yes, I don't want to say like, oh, if you should always question everybody and just keep asking why. Like, I don't think that's the right response because I don't know much. But what I would say is I think there's very clearly respectful ways of saying, okay, hey, you said this, and I believe you, and I believe that you are genuine in what you're saying. But what I know about you and what I've seen you do, it's still not adding up. Can you kind of help me, take me through this a little bit more, give me some more context? Context is everything. I think asking people for that and trying to, get into the definition of words because words matter. Yeah. And like, for example, if I, like to be someone who's really serious. If someone was like, no, yeah, like if someone was like, Dave, you're just really serious. Yeah. I'd be like, oh, that's amazing. Thank you. Like I want to be that. And so you said that to me and that's affirmed me. But if someone thinks of themselves as the life of the party or, lighthearted and someone else comes to them and says, hey, I just think I love you, like how serious you are, they might be offended by that. Yeah. Right. So there's context in people's relationships that matter. And there's also like what you mean by a certain word might make a difference. Right. And so like if someone calls me sarcastic, I'm probably going to think of that as a compliment in that I think sarcasm is funny. Yeah. But someone else might not think that way. Yeah. Right. Or someone else might use the word condescending. Oh, now that changes. And now I don't want to be that. I really want to make sure I'm not that way. And so I have often gotten in trouble too by being like, what do you like define the word for me?
Yeah.
And people are like, oh my gosh, you know what it means. And it's like,
Yeah.
maybe, but I thought I knew who you were.
Yeah.
And this is surprising that you're being this way or you're choosing to respond in this way. So I'm trying to double down because the only reason that you would be having this reaction or that I would be having this reaction is due to a massive miscommunication.
Yeah.
Or you don't mean what you're saying.
True.
So you're either using a word that you don't mean or there's a lot of other things that we need to deal with. And so I agree with you. Asking for clarification is helpful.
Yeah.
I think it's good. And I think when people get defensive at having to explain themselves, often that is because they don't actually want to justify their position.
Yeah.
They want to get out of the conversation.
Yeah.
Which means they probably don't have a good justification for whatever conflict like you're addressing.
Because who's gonna make a statement and then be shocked when someone comes back with wanting to know why they feel that way.
Right. And also people just don't know what they believe.
Yeah.
Like that sounds terrible, but like people have not fleshed out the belief structures that they have. And no matter what, no matter whether or not you're a spiritual person or not, you have a belief system.
Even selective outrage. Like,
right. Yeah.
You know?
Right. So it's like me just asking you why you do what you do sometimes can be like frustrating to people because they haven't taken the time to be like, oh, I probably rely on humor and sarcasm because I'm actually insecure about my emotional depths.
Yeah.
And I'm afraid people won't think I'm deep enough.
Yeah.
And they won't think that I'm emotionally articulate enough. And so if I'm just always funny, then they won't question it.
Yeah.
Like people don't do that self-reflection on their own very often. It requires either like tragedy that makes them do that.
Yeah.
Or, there's a helpful relationship that, slowly guides them down that, whether it's therapy or a friend who likes those conversations.
Yeah.
But that's the other thing is that people just haven't taken the time to think about what they think about.
That's a great statement.
Right. They don't think about, oh, yeah, maybe I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
Or, oh, maybe it is okay that maybe I do understand why you're upset that I haven't texted you back, but I've posted 4 times in the last 20 minutes.
I think that's why, for me, it's so important. And I really cherish the friendships that I have that we can go toe to toe in the most polite and respectful way. But we're here to like find understanding and smooth out any rough patches that it may have yielded themselves, and wow, you made really great points.
Thank you. And I'll keep saying this. These are the things that
we like to think,
spend time thinking about. And to me, this is way more meaningful. This is more meaningful conversation. It's more meaningful, interaction, and it's also more productive.
Yeah.
I just think that talking through these things is affirming in your emotional experience later when you're like, oh yeah, no, other people feel this way.
Yeah.
And now I can give words to some of the things I've been thinking about. And now I can open up a conversation with people that I love that I didn't used to be able to open. And I just was feeling a bunch of things, but didn't know how to reconcile them. And now I can. That's productive. I would rather be a part of conversations that are productive and that I walk away from or someone else walks away from being like, I'm going to use that. Yeah. I'm going to remember that and I'm going to apply that. And not that I have any sort of like great emotional wisdom. Like I'm severely flawed and broken and I don't understand how to do most things. I just like to talk about the things that I have spent time thinking about. Yeah. And if someone else relates to it, awesome. Great. And you might disagree with me and you probably are right in the way that you're thinking about it. And I might think that I'm right or whatever that means. And contrary to a lot of people's opinions about me, I'm actually not rarely in debate or in arguments with people with the goal of winning.
Like, you leave room for you to be wrong.
I would love to be wrong.
You'd rather be wrong than right.
Now, let me clarify. Let me clarify. I hate being wrong.
Yeah.
But there's a selfish part of me, and then there's a ideal part of me.
I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
And like, I hate being wrong.
Yeah.
But more than I hate being wrong, I desire to be better.
Yeah.
And so, as painful as it will be to face my failures and face my misunderstandings or where I have been wrong, I would rather go through that and get to the next spot and kind of elevate my level of maturity and growth and understanding of the world than be comfortably unchallenged and
I love where
safe.
you're going with this. It makes me think in my mind that I would rather, if the goal is to hit 5 obstacles on a course, I'd rather hit 25 because at least I went through something.
Right.
You know? Because that is, in my opinion, the point of life, is to be going through life in every situation that you go through, and every breakup and end of a friendship and loss of a parent or friend or relative. You're learning something.
Right.
There is something to be taught, something to be learned.
Right.
And those lessons that you take, you choose what to do with them. And your choice in what to do with these end up inevitably shaping the person that you are. So and I know it's so easy to be like, I am really hurt. And that's that point blank period. But I think it takes a lot of like effort and a lot of strength to be able to dig past I am hurt.
Yeah, I agree. To me, there's a level of humility that has to be there to admit your insecurities have led to a weakness that is hurting you.
Right.
Right. So to admit, hey, friend, it hurts my feelings when you don't text me back, but you post on your Instagram story. That feels weak. And maybe it even is weak. Maybe it is insecurity. And maybe you need to grow up. Maybe that's true. But it doesn't change that you're feeling it. You're still feeling that.
Yeah.
And so there's a level of humility to say, I'm hurting. I'm sad. This makes me feel bad.
Yeah.
And I can't just decide, well, that's weak and that's insecure and that's a negative quality. And so you better keep that to yourself and don't bug anybody else with it. Like, no, don't use it as an excuse to berate them or to bring them down or to gossip about them. Like, your negative feelings about someone does not give you justification to hurt them, period. End of discussion. No question about that.
Yeah.
But you probably should still contend with that hurt. And I think talk to people about it.
Absolutely.
in a way that is honest and not accusatory.
Yeah.
But I would want someone else to tell me, hey, Dave, the way that you talk about relationships and how important they are to you doesn't match up with the fact that you're not good at replying to me. And I would rather hear that and be like, oh, shoot, you're right.
Yeah.
Let me give you some context, but also you're right.
It also opens the door for conversation where you can find out if there's anything that you had no idea that they were feeling. Like back years ago when you asked me to do a photo shoot, I was very insecure about my weight. And I think seeing your text reminded me I'm not in the place that I want to be. I want to do this so badly, but I am so not confident and I'm very insecure with the way I look. And although you're reading it obviously as I'm not getting a response,
right?
I'm feeling as if it is just this alarm going off in my head that I'm not good enough to even be going to get my photo taken. So that is why conversation is so important, because you had no idea I was feeling that.
Right.
Until I finally was vulnerable enough to tell you, sorry, this is why I have been kind of a little MIA. I'm feeling this way. It has nothing to do with you. I'm sorry that I have been flaky.
Right. Yeah, I think that's huge. And to me, that level of vulnerability, I think just it kind of just covers all the transgressions. To me, true apology and repentance really is so healing. Mm-hmm. For them to be repeat offenders in anything, to me, whether or not it's relationships, whether or not it's consistency, communication, showing up, honesty even. The moment someone says, hey, I know, and I'm sorry, it's like it's all okay.
The grace.
The grace. There's a level of like the fact that you're acknowledging it and making me not feel crazy about my frustration is so refreshing.
Yes.
That I genuinely like, it's okay.
I've already forgiven you.
Like, yeah, like
as soon as I hear that.
Right. If I love you and I care about you, like, you're forgiven.
Yes.
All I've been stressed about is the fact that it seems like you don't think it's a problem.
Yeah.
And when you are doing something that's hurting me and you think that that shouldn't be something that hurts me, that's, I don't know what to do with that. Like, I don't know how to
it's a navigate.
Right. Yeah. And so no matter what, and that's what I tell people all the time, I'm like, I wish you just would have said that at the beginning, because it would have made things so much easier. And once again, like, there's also conversations to be had in that space about those things. But yeah, I really believe that. And, you know, I wish there was more space to have serious conversations with people, but context matters so much. And
so much.
And people also need to be in the right mood. So it's like, you need to be one-on-one, and it needs to be, you know, after you're both kind of tired and you're just kind of talking, or you're in a group of friends and you've, you know, stayed late and hung out and things have gotten deep. And then people are willing to engage in some more vulnerable topics where you can learn some things. Yeah. And then you're like, oh shoot, you think that?
Yeah.
I've treated you so poorly. Knowing that about you, like, I wish I would have known that, so I wouldn't have done the things that I've done. Like, I didn't know I was potentially neglecting you because I didn't realize your expectations were this or that. Yeah. Or I didn't realize that your social media was such a business for you. And so I've read all of your, you know, I've read into the fact that you're super present on Instagram and not texting me back as a lack of interest in our friendship. But you actually have to be on Instagram because you have an income that comes from that. And it's not like a reflection of like your followers are more important. It's just that your business is important. And I get that. Like, I wouldn't be sad if you weren't texting me back while you were at work. Right. And so like when you learn things about people, it's helpful and gives you empathy in a way that allows the pain to not be so severe. But people just are rarely in the mood for conversations like that. And I get it, because it's hard. There's no way to have a serious conversation where you don't have to contend with a little bit of your own brokenness.
Yeah. You know, that's one thing that, and I get to reap the rewards of sobriety through this, but one of my favorite things when I would be drinking was all of those deep conversations that come around drink 4 or 5. And people will start being more open, more honest. The girls in the bathroom are really telling you how they're feeling. Right. And it was just like you get a front row seat to like all of these feelings that people are really having day to day. And you know, that is beautiful.
And it's wild. You said it's beautiful, which I agree. Yeah. But can you trust it? Yeah. Because it's in that context. Yeah. So why not have beautiful conversations sober where you can actually believe that what people are saying are a little bit more coherent, maybe, and a little bit more articulate and thought through and probably have a more substance to it in terms of like the comprehensive meaning of what they're saying.
Right.
And so we all are like, I love, like, we love when, you know, late nights, all the secrets come out. It's like, yeah, no, what you mean by that is you like when dirt comes out. You don't want to have the like, when you don't text me back, my feelings are hurt conversation.
Yeah. Well, you don't want anyone grabbing your rug and shining a flashlight underneath it, but you're willing to watch someone else do it.
Right. And it's like entertainment.
Yeah.
Almost.
Well, I mean, I'm a Bravaholic, so like I am all about that.
Yeah. And I'm like, say, why can't we have those conversations?
Yeah.
Like, because I can't deal with it. And
it's hard for people, I think. But I think that's why it is so important to have conversations like this, because people need these conversations. They need them to make it socially acceptable, and not just women. Because you had asked what I would like men to know, and it's that Justin Baldoni is fantastic. He wrote a book called Man Enough, I believe. And he talks about how men, like the stereotypes of men and how they're not allowed to feel their feelings. And I think it's the most attractive when a guy can articulate how he's feeling and he isn't afraid to show his emotion. And that, to me, is sexy. I haven't always been like that, but I think it's so important for men to feel like they're not in a box. And, you know, there's a lot of things that the specific men have done in my past that have made me stray away from defending men. But
yeah, no one's really defending men at this point.
But I will say that I hope men will raise their sons to not be afraid to say what's on their mind, and when it comes to feelings, and not be afraid of the reaction of other men.
So I hear that a lot. This is one of my bigger struggles with our culture today. I hear that a lot, that women say, I want a man who can say what he feels. And I want more intentional conversation. And I want to know what their intentions are. And I want someone who's expressive and emotionally vulnerable and articulate. And I hear that. And I believe that they mean it. But here's where I struggle. As someone who has been told that one of my skill sets is being emotionally articulate and being sensitive and feeling my feelings.
Yeah.
I have never once seen it be an overwhelming driving factor of attraction when it comes to my dating relationships. Just haven't. Now, it has always been valued. And it's always been explicitly communicated as a unique thing about me in personal relationships.
Yeah.
But it has never been the spark that started the fire.
Yeah.
It's been like a steady flame that has kept the small fire going.
Yeah.
And so here's my thought or my question.
Yeah.
Which is, how do I say this correctly? Because I don't want to be complaining, but I do want to be honest. I'll say this. The men who have the attention of the women, the 1% of men that have the 99% of attention of women, the advice that they're giving other men is not to be more emotionally articulate.
Oh, I believe you 100%. So
that means that women aren't telling men by their behavior that emotional articulation and depth and being sensitive that's not
Is a
what's
quality,
working.
is a redeeming quality for them.
It might be valuable, but it's not what matters most. Right? So that's the disconnect for me.
Yeah.
Which is, okay, if the goal is A, B, and C, and a man has A, B, and C, and he's talking to another man who doesn't have A, B, and C, how to get A, B, and C.
Yeah.
If men and women were if women were being honest about what they want and what is the reason for their dating relationships, wouldn't be the same thing that they choose men for be the thing that those men are also telling other men to get better at? For it to be consistent?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Wouldn't men be like, oh, well, the reason I'm so successful relationally is because I'm able to communicate how I feel?
Yeah. But I think that women or anybody has a shell around them of who they are until they feel comfortable enough to let someone in.
Right.
And then that side would be shown. Because I'm not going to see Steve over here and he's going to immediately start crying because the old man's eating alone.
Right.
You know?
Okay, so what you're saying then is, I don't want to misspeak. So for you, it's more like depth of character is not exactly available early on.
Right. I think that there's a level of comfortability that humans tend to wait to show that side of them, because vulnerability is extremely difficult almost impossible for some people.
Right.
Sometimes the walls are up so high, you're not going to see that out of them. I've met many men who are very attractive and they don't let you in. They're like the wounded.
Would you say those men are more or less successful relationally across the board?
Less.
So they have fewer girlfriends than the people who are not that way.
Fewer girlfriends and many more partners, sexual partners.
So there it is, right there.
And I even heard a podcast, and these guys, I don't have the stats on this, but the guys, which doesn't add up to what I see on a day-to-day basis, is men don't like women who've slept with a lot of men, but men sleep with a lot of women.
Yep. That's accurate. Both of those things are true.
So, I mean, I haven't, but I know that would be, like, I have my own preference.
Right.
Which does align with that. But doesn't that seem a bit stereotypical? Like,
the double standard?
Yeah, the double standard.
Yeah.
The hypocrisy, I feel like.
Yeah. Well, I think there are some double standards that are warranted.
Yeah.
But you kind of have to submit to believing that men and women are different.
Yeah.
In the way that we generally are.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I see that double standard a lot.
But I do think that...
And I think I agree with it.
Yeah.
For sure.
I do believe that the men who are in that 1% that you mentioned struggle with deep, intimate, romantic relationships.
Right.
Absolutely.
So I guess my question is, like, do you think the men who are asking for advice are looking for serious girlfriends, or they're just looking for attention and relationship? Because I think that's the disconnect.
Depends. Are you meeting them in a coffee shop or at the Domain? You know?
Right.
At 2 a.m.
Right.
Yeah.
I guess that is like, so when a guy hears, you should be more emotionally, like, I think it's really sexy to be emotionally vulnerable.
Yeah. Like me saying, like a female saying that to a man.
It's like, so there's some context missing, which is, you also have to be attractive and interesting and intelligent and funny and keep me around long enough for me to have time to learn that about you.
Yeah.
And then it's really sexy, right? That whole first part.
Yeah. Totally
missing, because we feel bad about being like, Also, you need to be attractive and probably tall.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so that conversation, I think, is really missing some pieces, because when I hear women give men dating advice,
Yeah.
they're giving advice for a serious long-term relationship. And it's like, yeah, that's true and that's good.
Yeah.
But what this guy's asking for is, how do I stand out? How can I get someone's attention and keep it?
Yeah.
And the real answer to that question is rarely one that says good things about you.
Yeah.
Because the real answer for most people is, you need to look attractive to me.
Yeah.
You need to be built in a certain way. You need to physically look a certain way. And you need to have certain skills and abilities that I think are attractive. And all of that has nothing to do with character, which means that it's kind of shallow to say out loud, but it's real.
It's so true.
And it's normal, and it should be fine.
Yeah.
But we now live in a culture where if you were to say that you have a type or a standard that you date from, per se, all of a sudden you are judgmental, surface level, entitled to whatever. So, like, what do you do with that? Like, what do men do with that? Because no one is, well, that's not true. Other men are telling men make more money, because that's a huge thing for relationships, for attraction, is financial success, status, physical stature, and physical ability, like athletes, sports, even musical instruments. Like, those qualities and those talents are attractive, but they have nothing to do with character. But that's okay.
Yeah.
But it's not okay to say that, because as soon as you admit it, then you're like, oh, you're just into looks and all this surface level stuff. It's like, actually, chemistry matters. It's not everything, but it matters. But like, what do men like? So there's not an honest, I feel that there's not, it's not that it's not an honest conversation as much as it's an incomplete conversation where we don't want to tell, men, maybe put some deodorant on. Yeah. A little hygiene goes a long way. Maybe listening first. Maybe remembering what they say and bringing it up later. Yes. As like I paid attention. You mattered to me in that moment. Like small things that could be really effective. And then also, not everyone will like you. Yeah, that's true. There's actually a lot of peace in being like, sorry, not everyone's going to want to date you.
Just like everyone's not going to want to be your friend.
Right. I'm sorry, but every girl that you think is beautiful is not going to think you're beautiful. Yeah. That's just real. Yeah. Now, it's hard to face, but to be told, oh, what women really want is just men who mean what they say and who give the intentions. Like, yes, they do want that in the context of all the other boxes needing to be checked in some form or fashion. And that's okay. Yeah. It's not bad that they have those standards. It's not bad that they have preferences.
Yeah, no.
But there needs to be an honest conversation, and it can't just be. So to me, my point in all this is I wish that there was a little bit more honesty. Yeah. Or a little bit more comprehensive nature of like, hey, let me tell you, like, here's some things you could do to probably be more unique. Yeah. But also know that if she's really into 6'2" baseball players, you're not that. And so maybe this is not a good use of your time and energy. Yeah. But it's rude to say that to someone. Yeah. Because you're saying they're not good enough. It's like, no. We just we like what we like, and if I like this outfit, I'm gonna wear it. I'm not disrespecting every other outfit by choosing to wear that one. Yeah.
And at the end of the day, why would you want to be with someone who wouldn't really want to be with you?
Yeah, the answer to that question is painful. Because people want to be wanted more than they want to be known. Yeah.
Because we all, again, want human connection, and
I'd rather feel wanted even for a pretend version of me.
Yeah.
than to be
Ooh.
known
Yeah.
known as I am and be wanted by a much smaller percentage of people. So people would rather be wanted by 90% of everybody, even though it's a pretend version, than be truly wanted by the 15% of people who actually, if they knew full who you were, would still want to be with you.
Yeah.
Because we're just different, and that's fine.
Yeah.
But no, I think that's what's hard about like, what do you wish people knew about you? It's like, well, there's context to all of it.
Yeah.
And how do you navigate that? Well, Sarah, thank you for being here.
Yeah. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. This was crazy long. I think we're at an hour 20. But I really value your transparency and honesty, and just sharing kind of all that stuff, and really appreciate you as a friend, and I'm really glad that we've stayed, in touch over the last
Heck yeah.
over half decade, and we'll continue to. But thanks so much for being here, and hopefully this was as meaningful to you as it was to me.
It was fantastic diving into some of these deep conversations. It's truly one of my passions. So I appreciate you allowing me to have this time with you.
Awesome.
Thanks.